All right, hello, and welcome back to Afternoon Drive here on Joppa Radio. My name is Drew Moholland. Welcome back for another week of shows here. A very nice day out there. I told you spring was coming, folks. Afternoon Drive here, Joppa Radio. Again, my name is Drew Moholland, back from a little getaway here. It's my first show. I was in South Carolina for a few days, got back this morning, so this is my first kind of jump back into reality here. Lily Doucette producing today, Tyler Neufeld, David Kramer, Sarah Hayden in the house as well, so thank you for joining us. Hello to everybody streaming on the internet and watching on the cable as well. So usually you guys know I'll do this kind of big intro, but I have a great guest who is here nice and early today, so I'm going to jump right into it with a man I'm very excited to meet. Never met him before, William Shuttleworth. How are you, William? Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
You are a veteran, and well, let's just start with what's happening here pretty soon. You have quite a journey ahead of you, don't you, William?
I do. Next Wednesday on May 15th, I'm taking off and walking across the country to support advocacy for legislation and policy changes for veterans.
Literally leaving Newburyport and going across the country.
Yes, I estimate to be about 3,600 miles walking.
Wow. How, well, let's start with, obviously you're an Air Force veteran,
I am.
70s, in the 70s.
Yes.
And how did it, I know you're doing it for the veterans. Vets Don't Forget Vets is, I think, what you dubbed your program. What's the inspiration here? Why don't we start there?
Well, the inspiration is being a veteran and talking to veterans a lot my age that came back from Vietnam. They do not get the services they need, the resources. If you wanted to make an appointment at Veterans Hospital, sometimes it takes up to a year.
Yeah.
The resources are simply not there, and the advocacy at the Congress is not there now. Only 8% of all elected officials in America now are veterans. In 1970, it was 78%. So it's not on their radar, and somebody has to be that person. And I don't have grandiose visions that I can be that one person, but meeting thousands of people across country can make a change.
You know, I was reading about you, and you've had some stories about seeing some of the hard-hit veterans in this country. I think people know it's a problem, but they might not know the extent of the problem, and you've seen that with your own eyes, I know.
I did. There's some terrible stories out there of people that have lost limbs and eyes, and they get practically no services, no disability. The runaround continues to go. A lot of the men that came back from Vietnam had very difficult to diagnose illnesses such as PTS and Agent Orange. They still suffer with it 50 years later.
Yeah, I know it's amazing, and I know you said you don't feel like you can be the cure for all this, but every little bit helps, doesn't it? That's probably the way your mentality you're taking, right?
It is. Every little bit helps. Yesterday, for instance, there was an article in the local newspaper, and just walking around town, people recognize that I am one person that could make a change. They come up to me and talk to me. How can they help? What can they do to engage in this conversation?
Let's talk a little bit about the actual walk. I mean, I know how you train for marathons. There's a book for that. I don't know if there's actually a book for walking across the country from Newburyport.
I didn't find one, but I am trained to run marathons also.
Oh, are you? No kidding.
Yeah. You just continue to train, and you have the mental set for it, you have the energy for it, and the spirit for it. And a lot of what I'm doing not only comes from being pretty good physical shape for a 71-year-old guy.
Wow, 71.
I'm mentally really in good shape and have a good focus. It's a real spirit for me to do this.
You know, it's I'm sure you're going to have on your, these things tend to be, local news stations tend to pick up on these things, and you'll have some interruptions along the way, I'm sure. What's the challenge that you see making this actual walk?
Well, the biggest challenge, my doctor tells me, is he says I'm going to run out of cartilage.
Oh, is that right? Did he say you're crazy?
He didn't say I was crazy, but he said that most people my age do not have enough strength to walk that far, that long, 20 miles a day. Maybe I can't, but I'll never know unless I try.
You plan on trying to do it without doing the hotel thing too, right? Was I reading?
Yeah, I have a 23-pound pack, and in that pack is everything I need. My living room, my kitchen, and my bedroom for the next 7 months. And I have a stove, tent, backpack, sleeping bag, food, everything I need.
I take it you enjoy the outdoors. Is this you a past hiker and all that stuff?
I have. I've been all over the country. I love hiking. I love sleeping outside. I love my tent. And it really brings you in touch with the greater beauty of this country.
Absolutely. That seems like a great experience. Again, William Shuttleworth joining us. Vets Don't Forget Vets. He's about to walk 3,000 mile journey. More than that, actually. What did you say it was? 36?
It's a straight line exactly.
Yeah.
No roads take you to California
Right.
straight. So there's going to be a few detours, and I estimate it'd be about 3,600 miles.
About 36. All right. So this will be what's the feedback been from veterans? Have you already started hearing from them?
It's great. I think that people recognize that they aren't heard.
Yeah.
And if I can ignite some conversation nationwide, local elected officials and grassroots support from veterans, who knows?
Yeah.
Somebody can make a difference.
You know, you mentioned one thing that caught my ear there, how, what'd you say, 8% elected officials now have served? One of our local congressmen in this area who was just here this weekend is a former Marine, Seth Moulton, and he's thrown his hat into the ring here for the presidency. How did the vets feel about when you have, I mean, we have plenty of candidates vying for the White House this time around. What is the general consensus from the veterans? What are they looking for in political candidates? Is that something, do you have to have served to really have their respect? Maybe not always, but it does help.
I don't think you have to be a veteran or to serve to have respect for what a veteran stands for, any more than you don't need to be a police officer to understand the importance of a policeman, or a teacher to understand the importance of a teacher. But a veteran does have very unique needs.
Yeah.
In terms of long-term care and adequate pay. For instance, did you know that if you joined the Army today that you'd qualify for food stamps? Shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
We should take care of our people that put their life on the line, or potentially put their life on the line.
Yeah. It's interesting. So what are veterans feeling that they do not hear what they want right now from Washington? I mean,
I think so, and I don't want this to be a political event, but the two people that are currently running Veterans Affairs never served in Congress. They're hedge funds managers.
Yeah.
I don't see how you can adequately meet the needs of veterans unless you have regular contact and conversations with these people.
Yeah. Interesting. As far as this, when you're starting this, and I know you've really, how far does it go back for you? When did you realize that, you know what, this is something, this is a line of, or this is a program I want to proceed, the veterans taking care of veterans. When did you realize, you know what, this is something, this is a need and I can help?
It actually has come to my consciousness in the last year.
Really?
Yes.
Oh,
and
wow.
I thought I would maybe do it by walking the Appalachian Trail, but the more that I thought about it is that you don't really meet many people on the Appalachian Trail. This way, it puts me in conversation, walking the roads every day, literally in touch with potentially thousands of people that may have an interest in hearing what I have to say.
So you like the fact that you're going to be bumping into people and people are going to be hearing what you're doing here. It's not going to be an annoyance.
No, I've been an educator all my life, and I believe that the process of communication and conversation is really the important change agent in this country.
Excellent. So hopefully we get a lot of conversations going across the country. Well, how about the education background? Why don't you tell people what you did for over a long storied career, boy.
Well, for 20 years, in the Air Force, I was a psychologist and worked with POWs when they came back from Southeast Asia. And for 20 years in Portland, Maine, I ran a school for at-risk kids, real troubled kids, and decided that the real change was to run a school system. And I ran a school. I was the superintendent of schools for over 30 years.
Wow.
In different locations throughout the country, throughout the state of Maine, and moved here to Newburyport 3 years ago.
Wow. And now a Newburyport resident, and
Proud of
fitting
it.
right in. Proud of it. Very nice.
I love Newburyport.
Man, you know, when you talk about the education system too, this is another. I mean, I'm sure you have strong feelings about this too, but I'm the husband of a teacher, and there's a lot of teachers that struggle in the day to day when it comes to supplies and lack of funding, and it's tough. You know, it's a tough line of work in the being an educator, and I know you've seen it for both sides, a teacher and a superintendent. It's crazy.
Isn't it amazing that the starting pay for teachers in the state of Maine is $30,000?
That feels wrong, doesn't it? I don't think there's anything political about saying that seems low.
I think it's terribly low, but yet Bryce Harper, the free agent for the Phillies, makes $30,000 every time he comes to bat.
I think he only hit 260 last year, didn't he?
Well, I think he's batting 173 right now.
Is that right? Is that what he's at? My goodness. How about the state of the country's education system, though? I mean, I think I just saw a poll last week where Massachusetts actually was one of I believe the strongest state overall. So obviously, it has its problems, but in general, it is a good state it's doing okay. But the country as a whole, I mean, how do you feel it just as, somebody who's kind of seen it all through the education system?
There's tremendous ranges of quality schools and states, depending on how they allocate resources and where they put the resources.
Yeah.
Overall, though, if you think about who wins the Nobel Peace Prize and the medical prize and all the major changes in the world, many of them come from American schools. Remember, every astronaut had a teacher.
That's right.
Shakespeare had an English teacher. Can you imagine that?
Yeah,
It's hard to believe.
Must have said something right?
Every great thing happens because you had a teacher that made a difference. And gosh, do I have the respect for teachers out there.
Yeah, I mean, I still have the ones that I remember that had an impact on me. You know, it's funny the ones you take along with you and just never forget some of the one-liners or whatever you take away. But
I know this week is National Teacher Appreciation Week, and standing ovation to all of you out there.
Good week to be talking about it, right? What's the? It seems like you like to kind of tackle some of the big problems in the world. You have teaching at-risk kids for one. Now you're taking on the veterans cause here with your walk across the country. What makes you go in that direction? These are not small topics. These are big problems. You know.
Yes, I've always been sort of a big picture person that felt that I could make a difference, and I'm not one to sit on the sidelines for very long. I actually am fairly quiet by nature, but inside I have a vision for what things can be like and should be like, and I'm not fearful of making those attempts to make that change.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny. Every time I talk with one thing that veterans all seem to have in common, and I guess I kind of saw this maybe even with my grandfather at first, who served, but it seemed very straightforward. You know, would tend to answer what you asked, but never really gave you too much about the stories. I wonder, and I'm sure you don't want to get into too much of it, but you said you dealt with a lot of people that were struggling with a lot of issues post Vietnam. I cannot imagine that is an easy job to be working as a psychologist in that kind of realm. Like you said, there were a lot of problems, and I don't think maybe a lot of the young people even know that. It's not my generation, and it's certainly not the high schoolers' generation. A lot of them working here today. It's probably tough for these people to get their heads around.
Put it in perspective. When I was served during the Vietnam War, World War I was 50 years prior to that. Yeah, it seemed like forever. Yeah. Well, the Vietnam War now is 50 years ago, and so no wonder so many young people have no memory of it or no recognition of it. And somehow the Iraq War and the Afghan War, it doesn't really ring the same, even though it had tremendous consequences, oftentimes negative to those who served. Yeah. So yes, the stories that I heard and continue to hear are sad, but I want to use that sadness as a momentum to do things differently in this country. When
you think about the idea of sitting in a classroom, and the high school student, of course, has there's all sorts of problems in the world still today. We haven't figured it all out, but the idea of being drafted is something that I haven't lived through that either. But that seems to be a whole. It is tough for me to get my head around too. So the thought that they could be pulling you out of wherever you're doing and going to serve your country. That must have been a unique experience.
It was. I was just finished my master's degree, my first master's degree, and I was in my classroom in the middle of summer preparing to teach my first class. And my wife came in with my draft notice. She says, "Well, honey, I think you can take those bulletin board displays down. Here's your draft notice." And
wow, that's how you learned.
That's how I learned. And from that point on, 6 years later, the government basically had total control over my life. I don't regret a day of it.
I was going to ask you, it seems now you're a lifer here and you're still putting in the service, but I mean, when that first happens, everybody knows that they could be drafted, which I'm sure you knew that was a possibility. Is it I know a lot of people said they were just hoping they don't get that draft notice, understandably. Of course. Were you saying, all right, let's go, I'm ready to serve, or was it kind of like, well, that's a detour that I was not expecting?
Well, I did expect it. Yeah. I had a very low draft number. My wife was 8 months pregnant, so
my goodness.
Nothing's the best time of it, but you say, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to make a contribution, so let's do it.
Oh, wow. And what did she say when she handed you the draft notice?
Oh, my God. Come back alive, she said.
Did she really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So, timing is everything.
Yeah,
I can't imagine.
Is everything.
And how about the wives of those people that served? That is another underappreciated aspect,
really
isn't it?
Is. I mean, you think of any day you can come home from work in the military and get relocation notices, and she has to pack up and move and take care of the family, and oftentimes you're gone for a long time, at a period of time. Yeah. And I give my wife credit today for saying, honey, if you think you can make a difference for 7 months, I'll be here waiting for you.
How about that? How about how many states you lived in? Have you been bouncing around pretty good over?
No, not a lot. I've lived in Mississippi and Alabama and Maine, New York, and now Massachusetts will probably
It's not a bad list.
No, good list.
Good list. But that's quite a few states still. But yeah, I know some do. I mean, we're talking dozens and dozens of states for some people who serve, right?
Well, I've been fortunate to visit and travel in all 50 states, so I've really enjoyed the country.
And now you get a very unique perspective as you cross right through the middle of it, right? Again, we're joined here by William Shuttleworth here, an Air Force veteran, and he's about to do a 3,000-mile walk across the country supporting veterans. Vets Don't Forget Vets. It is a outstanding thing that I'm sure is going to get a lot of attention. You said next Wednesday, right? You're going to leave?
Next Wednesday. And I have a website, vetsdon'tforgetvets.com, and
Absolutely.
I encourage people to go on there, and I will have a fairly regular blog that people can take a look at to see what's up and see what we're trying to do here.
Who's watching you? For everybody has that family member. For me, it would be my mother, who tells me I'm crazy for some of the stuff I do. Who's the family member that's telling you you're crazy? Are they got several?
It's my kids, probably.
Kids, yeah.
Say, Daddy, what are you trying to do?
How many kids?
5.
5, wow.
5 kids. But my wife, she doesn't call me crazy, but she'll be my number one cheerleader, and I'm sure the one that worries most about me.
Absolutely. Anybody going to meet you along the way, or?
Not that I'm scheduled for. I'd be surprised if my wife doesn't show up along the way a couple of times.
All right. Well, that makes sense to me too. Or maybe they'll just watch you from a distance. Who knows? He'll be fine. How about I'm always fascinated by the stories of. I was just on a plane last night, and for some reasons, planes has always fascinated me. I'm right next to Beverly Airport. I live in Danvers on the other side of the Beverly Airport, and I've seen them take off my whole life, and I don't even like them that much. I'm a little bit afraid of heights, but you're an Air Force veteran. What is it like being in an Air Force plane? I can't imagine having real duties up there, and never mind any combat missions, but
well, 99% of all of my career was on the ground.
It was, okay.
Working in the mental health facility, helping the pilots that did that work. So
Okay.
I don't really have a first-hand knowledge of what it's like to be in an airplane any more than you do. Really.
All right, okay. Good. Do you like it? Would you prefer to be on the ground?
No, I would have been very happy being a pilot, but they took advantage of my psychologist degree and put me where they felt that I could be most beneficial.
How about I'm sure you learned a lot about the psychology of an Air Force pilot. That must be a little bit fascinating from the psychologist perspective too, because these are people that you're just not going to hear stories like that anywhere else. Did you learn plenty? I'm sure you did.
You just think of an Air Force pilot or an Army pilot. They're focused. They're highly intelligent. They're tremendously committed. Laser beam, quality thinking skills. Yeah, totally dedicated. These guys are sharp boys and girls.
What's the one thing people don't realize about the Air Force pilot and those? Because I think people think, I don't know what they think about it. You're right though. I always think when I think of an Air Force pilot, I'm thinking laser focus, like you said. Probably the most trusted pilot. If I ever hear I have an Air Force pilot flying my commercial airliner, I'm pretty happy about that. They seem to be just as structured, and it's the most powerful Air Force in the world, right? So
of course, and you think about how quick a decision has to be made.
Yeah,
better than Mookie Betts' reflexes.
Absolutely. Is there something that stood out to you dealing with them? I'm sure they're not all. It doesn't all have to be horror stories. Things went wrong stories for you, right? And maybe you just kind of get the everyday struggle of a pilot, right? Maybe he's got something else going on in his life, and I'm trying to deal with that in my job. Is that?
Of course, you think that the Air Force pilot, particularly during the Vietnam War, was separated from his family for sometimes a year without contact, and they had this focus and this vision and this mission, and I'm telling you, American pilots, number one. Yeah. There was, from what I've read about Vietnam, is a lot of those missions where they would come down and they were going back up not too long, probably in too short of a time span, right? Of course, the pressure was phenomenal. You know, and Unfortunately, they weren't terribly celebrated. It was for years that I ever told anybody that I served during the Vietnam War, because we came back and people had a very negative view of Vietnam veterans, and I think a lot of pilots, a lot of enlisted men really endured a lot of ostracization because of that.
Yeah, I mean, now we know, looking back, I mean, there's been books and songs written about that very topic. What was that? Was that a surprise to the Vietnam veteran when they came back? I mean, did you? I think it was maybe the veteran knew it was a unpopular war, I guess, maybe as far as a political perspective. But did they know that was? Were they expecting to be celebrated when they came back? Was it a surprise when they weren't?
I think they were surprised.
Yeah, I would think so.
I think they were very disappointed. I don't think that any of us expected to think that we would be vilified for being drafted and serving and carrying out orders that we were told to. It was probably not a well thought out war.
Yeah.
It was a war that many people say that we lost. It certainly didn't result in any long-term accountability or change in the world's configuration. It was a sad event that 56,000 men and women died for. With sometimes I wonder, what was that all about?
Yeah. Do you when you look back on it now, you said you're 71, and just when did you feel comfortable talking about it? Because I know so many, like I think you mentioned this earlier, they don't talk about it. It's bad memories, and people naturally want to push those away, or at least not share them with people. When did you feel comfortable about it?
Well, you come back and you have families, you have a job, and sometimes the past is pushed aside for a period of time, and so that you do feel comfortable about it. But I didn't really talk too much about my experiences in the military for 10, 15 years afterwards.
Really? Full decade, huh?
Right. And, nobody really wants to hear them now except veterans.
Really?
Not really. No, they always see those old war stories, and the older you are, the less likely they are to have any interest in it at all.
Really? That's surprising. Do your kids ask you about it?
Not too much.
No?
No, not too much. They don't really know. I think my daughter's a veteran.
Is that right?
Yeah, my daughter's
what
a
branch?
special ed director in a school district in Maine, and she served during the Iraq War for 3 years, and I was very proud of that.
Yeah, it's a kind of a similar set of circumstances, almost a little bit. I mean, not exactly, of course, but there are,
Exactly.
I went because I'm always that is surprising to me that the younger people aren't more interested, because for me, who didn't live through it, I've always found it fascinating, but. And it's always nice to actually hear some of the first accounts, because again, I've always had that vision of sitting in a drafter. I remember high school was only 10, 15 years ago for me, and I've thought about it before. What would that be like to be pulled out of class, and you had that, you were about to start another life?
Well, I also think that it would be good for every high school graduate to have 2 years of some service to America. Doesn't have to be the military. It could be the Peace Corps. It could be volunteers in service to America. It could be for the Red Cross. But I think that would be a really great opportunity for kids to say, we have this country, and part of the currency for living here is to give a little bit back. Yeah. And I think then everybody would have a level playing field of what it was like to give to this country.
It must drive. You don't have to be a veteran to go crazy about some of the stuff you see in Washington with all the division. But it must hurt the veteran a little bit more when you see all that fighting about just kind of stuff that. Can we talk about the real issues in the world, please? There's going to be. I won't ask you to get political,
exactly.
But I do know that must be frustrating for the person who's actually served.
Exactly, and I think many times people see the military as a force of evil and power. I also think that really the military can stand for peace. In fact, there's a whole organization, Veterans for Peace. Yeah. And my hope that anything that I have done in my life as a veteran and continue to do as I walk across the country is to promote that the military can stand for peace as much as it is for combat. Absolutely. And here's your walk to kind of keep that message going. When you make this 3,000 mile plus trek across the country, I wonder, are you carrying a lot of those maybe friends you lost along the way, and maybe you do that every day you wake up, but or at least maybe some of the stories you've seen of veterans struggling on the streets? You meet them every day, and they mean a lot to me. I hold them very dear in my heart. Isn't it sad, Drew, that 25% of all homeless people in America are veterans? It is. It's a staggering number, actually. It is staggering. Yeah. And the number of men and women that have opioid and alcoholism is a our veterans as a direct result of untreated PTSD and other combat issues that never were adequately addressed.
This is mostly a burden that this country has failed at. I think is probably the easiest way to say that. But I do wonder: is there a something built within the military psyche that maybe the veteran doesn't want to ask for help either?
Yes.
Is there a little bit of that?
We're prone to be quiet and be tough and suck it up and have a stiff upper lip, and a lot of that is the makeup of a soldier. And who wants to admit that they're weak or that they have vulnerability or they have emotional difficulties? Nobody raises their hand when the teacher says, "Who's in this class feels depressed or drug addicted?"
It makes it a tough battle, doesn't it?
It does. It's a tough one.
What's if there's one thing that can be done to help veterans right now, the homeless veteran or just a veteran struggling just in general, what is the one thing that jumps off the page? This needs to change before anything happens.
I think it's adequate medical care.
Adequate medical care. So struggling for actual health insurance, struggling to get to a hospital.
Yes.
Just your usual physical checks.
Absolutely. And to have access to proper medical and mental health. And
that seems like
support.
an easy one to me. You serve this country, you should be able to get a
you would
check.
Think so. You would think the amount of money that we waste on useless procedures, and we have the money. It's just a matter of prioritizing it to the people that need it most.
It's always seemed to me when you're talking about, it's not an issue that, people hear veterans, they hear these problems that veterans have. It's not like it's something that's thrown into the back corner, but it is. It seems like you have certain politicians that will bring it to the table, and it'll be a big thing, and then it will kind of go away, and then maybe another campaign cycle, somebody will make it a big thing, and then it will kind of go away. Have you seen those kind of ebbs and flows of okay, it's super high focus, okay, this might be a good moment for the country, and then it kind of frustratingly goes away for a little bit. Is that accurate?
Well, you think of what the political process is. The political process is really the sort of the judicial carving out of finite resources.
Mm-hmm.
And those finite resources are sometimes allocated toward veterans during times when that issue seems to be of a greater social priority.
Yeah.
And I don't want to take money out of other people's pockets.
Right.
I think that the education young children needed. I think unemployed mothers and fathers need that support too.
Yeah.
Single parents need that support. But we definitely know that my cause in this time, and maybe the next time I walk across America, I'll have another cause. It is really to support the needs of veterans.
Do you see, and this is obviously locally, we're getting all sorts of headlines. You had a great article in the newspaper about you. Are there other veterans that maybe you keep in contact with that are kind of, you know what, I'm with you. I'm doing something like this too. Do you guys, is there a kind of a group of veterans who are in great shape and great health and, can do these sorts of things? Is there going to be a lot of these sorts of things? Or
Well, there are a lot of veteran groups in the country. The American Legion, the Veterans Foreign Walls, the Disabled American Veterans. And I'm hoping that as I walk across the country and they see me and they see my signs and they get some advance notices that I'm coming, that they will come out to greet me and to say, I need to be part of this discussion too.
Yeah. What discussion are you? I think people are probably just trying to vision in your head. You got your backpack on, you're walking, you're hoping to have some veterans and maybe just other people who just want to know what they can do, ask questions. What are you envisioning? Let's sit down on the park bench over here as I keep moving through and talk for a little bit. Or
exactly. Having coffee, somebody sees me, say, I'm a veteran. Let's talk about it. What can we do together? Who do you know? What resources are you accessing? What resources are you not aware of? How can we support candidates that actually support a veterans platform?
Yeah.
Nobody needs to be helpless.
Yeah. I remember, again, we're joined here by William Shuttleworth, Air Force veteran. He's walking 3,000 miles across the country starting next Wednesday. Vets don't forget vets. If you're tired Wednesday, do not complain. Think about William Shuttleworth is going to be about to do. I remember when I was younger, I used to go to my mother used to take me to the Memorial Day parade with my grandfather, in uniform and the Veterans Day parade. And, he would always, salute the trucks that came by and whoever was on them. And one moment always stands out with me when we were getting a coffee and I think we were in maybe Dunkin' Donuts or something, but that's not important. Somebody came in and just noticed he was in uniform and just said thank you. And I noticed it meant a lot to my grandfather. And, just being in uniform and somebody said thank you. Do veterans hear that enough?
I don't know. I hope so.
Yeah.
I know any time that people introduce me as a veteran, that's oftentimes what I get, thank you.
Yeah.
That thank you, though, is the very first step of
Yeah.
acknowledging the needs. And sometimes people say thank you as a way of saying hello or being polite
Yeah.
without really understanding the dimensions of what that sacrifice might have meant.
Yeah.
But it was nice that your grandfather received that. I always feel grateful when someone says thank you, William, for serving in the Air Force.
That is interesting, though. It does make sense to me. That's maybe just now take that thank you and just take it one step further.
Exactly.
Maybe think about some of these others. What's the? I'm kind of want to dip into your teaching career, if you don't mind, for 1 second, just because you said how many years did you teach again?
Well, I ran schools for over 20 years and ran a school in Portland for at-risk kids for 20 years. But then the school system's a superintendent for over 25 years.
Well, okay, and that's Portland, one of my favorite cities these days.
Yeah,
by
it's
the
a
way, I
great
love
city.
Portland.
Why wouldn't it?
What's it like? What was it like working with those kids? And it seems like you just like making impacts on lives, whether it be young lives or people, guys your age, really these days. But
all the kids that I worked with had been arrested and had really at-risk behavioral profiles, and
that is not an easy gig as an educator.
Oh no, it was a tough gig, but
Yeah.
I decided that the curriculum that failed them was no longer going to be replicated in my school, and we created an adventure-based experiential learning program where we thought that as tough as you think you are as a kid, let's see how tough you are when you get in class 4 waters for 5 days in a kayak going down the St. Johns River.
Yeah, about that.
And so we had an outdoor educational program that we think made a huge difference, and we kept data on that.
Yeah.
We know that you were 65% less likely to ever commit another crime after you came to our school.
Wow, is that right?
Which I think is a pretty good track record.
That is a very good track record.
So, and because we cared, we were available 24 hours a day if we needed to be. We involved the family unit in terms of that program. We met the needs of the families as much as we tried to meet the needs of the kids.
Yeah.
It
Wow.
was really a calling, and I think really nothing you do is great unless it is a calling.
Yeah, well, that's a good line right there. I like that very much. I'm sure you take the tools that you learned and you were trained with in the military pretty much everywhere you go every day. Those never leave you. I feel like that might have worked quite a bit with those kids, though, then.
I think, Drew, that every time you meet somebody, no matter how short that meeting is, it can make a difference in the life of that other person.
Mm.
There are no meaningless contacts. Even the second that it takes to take a ticket at a toll booth when they had toll booth takers
Yeah.
can make that difference in that person's day.
Yep.
And we can make that difference in the life of kids, of people we see in the street, someone standing in line at the grocery store,
Yep.
someone waiting impatiently for coffee, or for a veteran that's standing on the corner downtown wishing that he had $1 for a cup of coffee. Every contact can be precious.
That's great. And I bet, and when you talk about young people in particular, I wonder if, you mentioned let's throw them in a kayak and see how they deal with this. I wonder if maybe you hold a little bit. I've never been talked to for a guy who has served his country like this. This is somebody who, this was the ultimate sacrifice, serving the country. I wonder if you immediately have a little bit more of their attention, because sometimes it's about that, right? Let's get the attention of these young kids, and if we don't get that, then we're not going to have too much luck.
I don't think one's biography is particularly significant to the life of a current teenager. I think it's the relationship that you build right today, not on your past accomplishments or what you did in the past.
You got to earn it right then.
It is who you are today. You learn the trust of a kid based on your currency that you provide right today.
I will take your word for that then. I'm no expert on teenagers. But again, William Shuttleworth here. Vets don't forget vets. He's walking 3,000 miles. What are you putting in the backpack?
Not much, because you don't want to carry a lot. I have 2 pair of clothes, 2 sets of clothes, socks, a stove, my sleeping bag, my sleeping pad, my tent, and a journal. That's about it.
How much writing you going to do?
Well, I write a lot anyway, so once I fill that journal, I'll send it home to my wife and buy another one along the way.
You said there's no book on this. I'm thinking I know a potential author here when it's all said and done.
Well, that's not my intent. But
Let's go one step at a time, maybe.
I'm sure that we'll hear some fantastic stories that
Yeah.
people would be interested in.
What is the where is the exact finish line?
My hope is Vandenberg Air Force Base in Lompoc, California. Most people know that's where Elon Musk is sending his private spaceships, launching them. So it's right on the coast between Santa Barbara and California.
Okay, another man who had a teacher, Elon Musk, right?
Everybody has a teacher.
And that is I like kind of how that brings it full circle. The going to the Air Force bases.
That's right.
What would you say? I mean, even a guy as confident and as strong as you and in greater shape as you probably has some fears about this trek. What's your biggest concern?
Well, I think I don't have any fears.
Yeah.
I don't really live with many fears in my life. But I'm also a realist to say that I've not ever met a human being my age that walked across the country. And maybe I won't. Maybe my body will break down. Maybe my joints won't be able to do it. So if I have any doubts or any lingering thoughts, that would be the only one. As well trained and in good physical shape that I am, I'm also mortal.
Yeah, well, it's I know we'll all be rooting for you. It seems like baseball came up a couple times during our conversation. You're a Red Sox fan, or?
I'm a big Red Sox fan. I have been years and years and years ago in Ted Williams' day.
Williams' day. What another man who served his country right there. That is
two
all.
wars.
I mean, that is incredible. The guy. People don't realize what kind of career that is when you put it right in the middle, prime of his career.
5 years out of his career, and he came back and continued to perform at a fantastic level and never complained a bit about it.
Yeah. Was he what was the talk back in the, I mean, was he like somebody that veterans people serving would look to? Teddy ball games. Do you remember stories about him?
He's the only person that I've ever known that was the greatest in 3 different fields. He's considered the greatest fighter pilot ever.
Yeah.
He's considered the greatest hitter ever and the greatest fisherman.
Well,
not a bad trifecta for a man's life.
Not bad, yeah. And yeah, you're right. I've heard that line. You never know if people just throw that around because it's Ted Williams, but he really was. There's no joke. He was quite the fighter pilot, wasn't he?
He was the best.
Wow.
I mean, people, even today, 50, 60 years later, Ted would be 101 now.
Yeah.
Think of that.
Yeah, geez, crazy. Talk about laser focus to hit that two-seamer out of the ballpark. You're going to get somebody to send you scores? How are you going to get updates here? You got the phone with you? Or?
I'll be still too close to bad news, I'm afraid, the way the news goes. So as I walk around, I'm sure I'll see newspapers and radios and TVs. I don't even have a TV at my house. So
oh, is that right?
No, I don't. I gave it up 12 years ago. I saw that as an intrusion to higher levels of thinking that I was more capable of using.
Wow, Chris, how do you monitor the Sox? Do you like the radio still, or?
I love the radio.
Nothing like baseball on the radio, right?
Nothing better than Joe Castiglione on the radio.
There you go. He's been a long timer there. He does a good job. A lot of partners along the years too. But
yes,
well, hopefully we get somebody. I'm sure you'll monitor your Red Sox. They kind of steadied the ship a little bit here. So
yeah, they will. They'll be okay.
They'll be all right. It's a long season, and it is a long walk for you ahead starting Wednesday. William Shuttleworth, anything you'd like to add? You can pitch the website again. I know you want people to get to that, but how can we follow that journey?
Well, if you go on my website, vetsdon'tforgetvets.com, you'll see my daily blog. It probably won't be daily once I get on the
You're a little busy.
At least it'll be weekly that people will, if they're interested in to support my campaign, they will be able to visit my website.
Absolutely. Well, William Shuttleworth, thank you for all that you're doing, and thank you for your service. And we'll hope that we say thank you, and hopefully people can hear that and maybe take the next step and dig a little deeper into everything you end up blogging about and follow your journey. Best of luck to you along the way here.
Thank you, Drew.
Thank you so much for joining us. William Shuttleworth, he leaves Wednesday from Newburyport, and it's going to be a fun journey as he walks across country, 3,000-mile walk for veterans. Vets Don't Forget Vets. Go check out his website because it is a very informative place, and he'll keep you up to date on his journey along the way. Keep it here. We'll be back to finish strong in just a moment. My name is Drew Moholland, and it is Afternoon Drive on Joppa Radio.